209 AC is a very interesting time for House Targaryen. George R. R. Martin has dedicated a lot of brainpower to fleshing out this simpler era in the lore. So far, 3 short stories have been written that detail the setting. The 7 kingdoms are now united for the first time ever, but the looming threat for the royal family is the family itself. Just as the Targaryens were learning how to rule and hold power without having any more dragons, the king's half-brother rebelled and caused a fairly big uprising, similar to what we see going on in House the Dragon. A decade before the story of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms begins, Targaryen half-siblings went to war for the Iron Throne. The opposing factions were nowhere near as close in power as the Greens vs. Blacks. The Loyalists shattered the Blackfyre rebels' army in a big battle. Some ambitious houses sided with Daemon Blackfyre, who's remembered as the Pretender. But for the most part, the great houses that look over their respected kingdoms had no interest in this cause. Despite being legitimized by their father, the horrible late king Aegon IV, Daemon Blackfyre was still a bastard that represented the stereotype of bastard children always being a threat to the main family line, untrustworthy with treachery in their veins. Aegon IV, aka the Unworthy's true-born heir, King Daeron, is loved by most in 209 AC. Some nobles dislike how close he is to the Martells and Dorne as a whole, but overall a very good king. He's called Daeron the Good for a reason. The surviving members of House Blackfyre escape overseas to Essos to live in exile, regroup, and figure out their next plan of action after their failed first rebellion. King Daeron the Good has his trusty spy master keeping an eye on them, another base-born half-brother, Brynden Rivers, the Three-Eyed Raven. We won't see a lot of these two in the first season of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, if at all, unless the showrunner is willing to expand on the source material, but the books lead us to believe these two had a very good relationship. Young Brynden Rivers is a complex enough character to carry the whole damn prequel. How they handle him and his powers is what I'm looking forward to most when it comes to this new adaptation. Despite being the MVP during the Blackfyre Rebellion, Brynden is nowhere near as loved as his half-brother, the king. He's actually feared and hated by most, because of his rumored practice of dark magic. Plus him walking around with a wide open wound where his eye used to be doesn't help things. Another one of his brothers did that to him in the big battle. The family dynamic is insane. It's the Targaryens after all. Let me draw up this era's family tree, because otherwise it's so hard to absorb the crazy things I'm saying. Aegon the Unworthy's lust and spiteful decision-making caused so many problems. His reign was deeply corrupt. He was always making life difficult for everyone around him, especially if they didn't go along with his dumb antics. Ruined the lives of his father, sister wife, brother, and even heir. On his oversized deathbed, the Fat King legitimized all the bastards that he had with noble women. One last spit in the face of his true-born heir Daeron, who regularly challenged some of his bad decisions. The countless bastards the king had with common women were shit out of luck, remaining unacknowledged. But the great bastards were essentially royalty now. Aegon hated his own son so much that he quietly tried to spread the rumor that he was a bastard, then went on to pass the family's ancestral Valyrian steel sword called Blackfyre to his actual bastard Daemon, allowing him to have his own lands and title as founder of the Targaryen branch family, House Blackfyre. Problem is, the sword Blackfyre is traditionally passed on to only kings. Aegon the Unworthy directly caused the Blackfyre rebellions, just to spite Daeron the Good. One of the great bastards from a lady of House Bracken fanned the flames for Daemon to call his banners and begin a war. That bastard's name is Aegon Rivers, also known as Bittersteel. He's the brother who carved a hole in Brandon's skull. Their rivalry is iconic. It's the most heated in all the story. 5 of Aegon the Unworthy's children would go on to actually be very important figures in the lore. Only 2 trueborns being Princess Daenerys, who helped tie Dorne with the 7 kingdoms by marrying the Prince of Dorne, and obviously Daeron himself. 3 of his many bastards are deeply tied together. Brynden and Aegor were essentially born to hate each other because of the circumstances around their births. Their mothers came from the rival Riverland houses, Blackwood and Bracken, and their dumb father dismissed his Bracken mistress for a new Blackwood girl and the younger bastard Brynden. Brynden was lucky enough to be raised in Core, giving him a massive advantage in life, while bitter Aegor was thrown to the Riverlands. The rivalry gets more personal when another bastard is introduced. Their half-sister, Shiera Seastar, a very mysterious girl who caught the eye of both bastard bros. Brynden Rivers tells Bran Stark he had a brother that he loved, a brother that he hated, and a woman he desired. Desired might be an understatement by the Birdman. It's said he proposed 100 times. Shiera gave him her bed, but never her hand. It amused her more to make him jealous. Just some regular old Targaryen shenanigans. She likely toyed with Bittersteel as well without giving him her hand. Depending on how successful the prequel's first 3 seasons are, will determine if they take the gamble on making more stories without any source material. Even if it miraculously becomes a big hit for HBO, there will be a big gap between a 3rd and 4th season to do some careful and thorough writing. These later seasons would be when and if Bittersteel and Shiera Seastars show up. That would be a crazy big moment for the hardcore book nerds. We have no info on whether or not these 3 great bastards had any children of their own, but King Daeron sure did with his Martell wife. Sexism is a big theme in House of the Dragon. I would call it the overlaying theme actually. In Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, racism will take its place, with the main blunt force revolving around the Dornish and their beloved rulers of their kingdom, House Martell. When the Targaryens and Martells finally made peace through marriages, some new laws were implemented for Dorne. The white nobles of Westeros don't just hate the Dornish for being a little more tan. During the unifying negotiations, Dorne was able to secure some beneficial rights that no other kingdom had under the Targaryens. Plus Daeron's court had some Dornishmen around, making the other lords and ladies think the Martells had unfair advantages. For generations, Targaryens horrifically burned all of Dorne. Dorne's army had to hide in mountains and deserts just to survive the dragon attacks. So much of their population, land, towns, and castles were destroyed. The jealous lords must have forgotten that part. Even Aegon the Unworthy attempted to make Dorne burn, despite not having any more dragons, while things were peaceful. His plot involving wildfire failed miserably in a forest before ever completing the Long March. He failed at everything besides a paternity test. King Daeron had to fix all the problems his shitty father caused. A clean sweep of the small council and even the city watch had to go down due to all the corruption. Daeron is written to be damn near perfect, except he wasn't much of a fighter. On the battlefield, it was 2 of his sons that became the stars of House Targaryen, and Bloodraven of course, with his band of archers called Raven's Teeth. Bloodraven was such a valuable member at court that he was awarded the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister, that we see the rogue prince Daemon using in House of the Dragon, even though he was more of an archer because of his smaller build. Brendan was born albino with red eyes and all, while also being a little sickly. 2 of Daeron's sons were real warriors, and they're about to be major players in the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Even more so than the king himself. Heir to the Iron Throne, Prince Baelor is everything his father wasn't on the battlefield. Little brother Maekar, also a force during the Blackfyre Rebellion. Together, they're in the nicknames of the Hammer and the Anvil. More praise was directed to Baelor in the fighting because Maekar's job was just to defend. That's why he got the epithet of the Anvil. This causes some tension between the brothers. Aside from these 2, King Daeron and his queen, Mariah Martell, had 2 more boys, the Prince Aerys and Rhaegal. Aerys, an ambitionless man, only interested in books. For some reason, this is the character that the Mad King is named after. The other prince being Rhaegal, a curious character who was very likely mad. Expanding upon this generation would be nice, because we only really know the dynamic between Baelor and Maekar, while very little is written about the other 2 princes. Baelor had 2 sons of his own with his wife, the lady Jenna Dondarrion, who came from the Stormlands. Maekar got with a Dornish lady, Diana Dane. House Dane are some of the paler Dornish, who live away from the deserts in their mountains. They also curiously have purple eyes, just like the Targaryens, the only other family in Westeros with this trait. Together, they made a whole bunch of babies. 4 sons and 2 daughters. All these little Targaryens popping up troubled King Daeron. With more than enough brass in the line of succession, the king ordered his son Maekar to send one of his bookish boys to the Citadel, forfeiting all potential lands and titles to become a future maester. That happened to be young Aemon Targaryen, all to avoid any more Targaryen civil wars over the crown. Maekar wasn't very happy about this. He had lots of trouble at home. His eldest was a perpetual drunk. Daeron the Drunk tries to escape reality because of all the magical visions that come to him in his dreams. Just like Queen Helaena in House of the Dragon. These dragon dreams can have a toll, it seems. The next son, Aerion, is a violent and potentially mad as well. The youngest boy, Aegon, is fiercely rebellious. Aemon and the 2 girls were the only ones that gave their parents any sense of peace at home. Aemon is only mentioned in between the 3 short stories that the show is adapting, mostly through Aegon talking about his favorite big brother, Aemon. Aemon is already off in the Reach, studying at the Citadel by the start of the first season, but does have a very minor role to play when the books have a little time jump. So maybe they can incorporate those scenes as a funny Easter egg, because who doesn't love Maester Aemon? A lot of Targaryen family drama on the way for us, with a much smaller budget needed and even less episodes per season. I do hope we get all 3 short stories adapted. I love the setting and the lore, even the second story, which is very slow. Martin dives deeper into the eternal struggles of a knight, especially hedge knights, who serve whoever will hire them, traveling wherever there is fighters needed. If House the Dragon is meant to show Targaryens in their prime, we're talking power-wise, Game of Thrones shows them at their lowest point thanks to the Mad King's actions. And the Seven Kingdoms is somewhere in between, trying to hold everything together without any dragons. We'll have a fun range of many different family members under the three-headed dragon banner. So the dialogue and character arcs are going to have to carry this slower show. And if that doesn't work, they can always go crazy with CGI and some of the family's dragon dreams. Thanks for watching, guys.